You know that dark international crime organization known as Spectre from the Bond films? The one with shady deals, assassinations, manipulation of world events? Well, I'm here to tell you that yes, groups like that actually exist, and no. This isn't a conspiracy theory podcast. This is based on the real-life case known as the Octopus Murders and other similar highly classified organizations operating today. A good friend of mine gave me a reliable source who, in fact, is dead today. This source, whom I had interviewed in the 90s, had left me a message on a tape cassette. Now, folks, I'm not saying this individual was part of the organization, but in fact knew or had some knowledge of it.
Okay, I will just come out and say this directly. I don't know why I bother, but maybe you should just hear this and understand this very carefully. They'll never know. They can't know the truth about them, about us. It's buried deep. This organization, it's been pulling the strings for decades, shaping wars, governments, economies, changing history itself. You think the world just happens? Number everything. Every event has been orchestrated, and they've erased every trace, every witness. No one ever sees the full picture. They make sure of that. We control everything, and no one will ever know. Not in their lifetime, not in 1,000 lifetimes. You won't believe me. No one ever does. But it doesn't matter because they've already won. You think you know history? The wars, the revolutions, the collapses of empires, all of it manipulated. You live in a world built on lies, shaped by an organization so powerful, so deeply entrenched that its fingerprints are on every major event in the last century. They've rewritten your past, controlled your present, and they're shaping your future as we speak. They're untouchable. You'll never see them, never hear their names. They operate in shadows behind governments, corporations, even your own thoughts. Every truth you think you know has been carefully curated. And the most terrifying part, no one will ever know. History's been rewritten, and you, like the rest of them, will live in ignorance.
So, first, let's start with the movie Spectre. Released in 2015, it follows James Bond as he uncovers an international shadow organization responsible for global chaos, terrorism, organized crime, arms deals, the whole works. The leader of Spectre, Blofeld, is pulling the strings behind political assassinations and global power moves. You see, what's chilling is that organizations like this have existed and still do today. And one of the most terrifying parallels to the Spectre storyline is a series of real events connected to what's known as the Octopus Murders. It's a name that sounds like it was ripped straight from a spy novel, but it was part of a criminal syndicate so vast and influential that the name Octopus wasn't just metaphorical. It referred to the organization's far-reaching, multi-tentacled influence. This group was involved in everything from blackmail and corruption to, wait for it, assassination and control of intelligence agencies. Casolaro was an investigative journalist, digging into a case that involved corruption at the highest levels of government and business. He had stumbled upon something bigger than he could have ever imagined, an interconnected web of criminal activity involving defense contractors, the intelligence community, and, allegedly, international crime syndicates. He called this network the Octopus, and he believed they were responsible for a lot of nefarious activity. The tentacles of the octopus didn't just involve one or two corrupt businessmen. It was an international syndicate with layers of protection and influence in places that should have been beyond corruption. Intelligence agencies, high-level politicians, and powerful corporations were all potentially in the loop. Casolaro wasn't the only one who had stumbled upon this secret web. Other whistleblowers, journalists, and insiders have hinted at similar networks operating in the shadows. Some met untimely ends, while others were discredited, blackmailed, or simply disappeared.
You ever seen Tom and Jerry? That old cartoon? The cat chases the mouse, always trying to catch him, always failing. It's funny, right? Well, think of that, but with much darker consequences. The game, the chase, it's the same. Except this time, the mouse isn't just outsmarting the cat. He's controlling him, making him think he's the one in charge. That's how this organization works now. They let the world think they're the cat. Governments, corporations. They all think they're chasing down the criminals, fighting corruption, making the decisions. But in reality, they're just running in circles, while the real players, the ones in the shadows, they're pulling all the strings. Like Jerry, they slip through the cracks, always a step ahead. Always making sure the cat never wins. And the best part? They let the whole world laugh, convinced it's all under control, where they stay hidden. In this game, no one ever realizes the mouse is running the show. Just like Tom, the world keeps playing the fool. And the organization? They just sit back and enjoy the chase.
Now fast forward to today. We know that organized crime has evolved, but the concept of a global criminal network, akin to Spectre, is far from a fantasy. Modern-day criminal organizations might not be operating out of volcano bases with spaceships, but they have their hands in drug trafficking, cybercrime, human trafficking, and political manipulation, and in some cases, the scale of their influence might even dwarf the fictional Spectre. What most people don't realize is that some of these dark web organizations operate like corporations. They're hierarchical, they've got employees, they even have customer service departments. Just, for illegal drugs, weapons, and hacking services. These organizations operate across borders, laundering money through cryptocurrencies and using shell companies that stretch from Russia to South America to Europe. Some of these groups have infiltrated legitimate businesses, acting as the invisible hand that manipulates economies and governments. It's the 21st century equivalent of what Casolaro called the octopus. But here's where it gets really dark. When you hear about people being silenced, about reporters being jailed or disappearing, you have to wonder, how far does this reach? Just last year, a series of mysterious deaths among cybercriminals, government officials, and journalists raised eyebrows. Some died in car crashes. Some were found dead in apparent suicides. When you dig into the details, you'll find they were all looking into the same kinds of questions that Casolaro was: organized crime, corrupt governments, and the hidden elite pulling the strings. So what does this all mean? It means that the reality is, in some ways, stranger than fiction. Spectre might be a fictional organization, but the idea behind it is very real. The concept of a hidden, interconnected criminal network that spans continents, evades justice, and operates in the shadows, that's happening today. From drug cartels to human trafficking rings to cyber criminals stealing millions while working hand in hand with corrupt officials, they're out there and they have tentacles reaching into places you wouldn't believe. I'll leave you with this thought. If one investigative journalist could stumble upon an organization as vast as the Octopus back in the 90s, just imagine what's being hidden from us today.